Hello, and welcome to Don Hammond's Arlington Weekly News. I'm Daniel Pineda. We have a great program today. We have our news stories, community bulletin board, and 55 plus news. But first, a social media announcement. You can watch the Arlington Weekly News on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Arlington Weekly News and the number 1. We're also on Facebook and also on 96.7 WERA FM. Now on to our first news story for today. As of Sunday evening, May 16th, reports show that the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Arlington had reached 15,266. Regular viewers and listeners will know the continuing increase in our reported case numbers. Arlingtonians are still getting sick, 40 people in the last 7 days. Following the most recent guidance from the Center for Disease Control, Governor Ralph Northam announced that he will be ending the existing Virginia mask mandate on May 28th. However, masks will still be required on public transit, healthcare facilities, congregate settings, K-12 public schools. In a press release, Governor Northam stated, "I strongly urge any Virginian who is not yet vaccinated to do so. The vaccines are the best way to protect yourself and your community from COVID-19. The message is clear. Vaccinations are how we put this pandemic in the rearview mirror and get back to being with the people we love and doing the things we have missed." Virginia will still be technically in a state of emergency until June 30th. The governor's office said he would take steps to make sure people have the legal option of wearing masks even after that date. Here at Don Hammond's Arlington Weekly News, we want to remind viewers and listeners that the best of the vaccines have been demonstrated to be only 95% effective, and that no one is guaranteed immunity. And now on to our next news story for today. Here is a primary result from the upcoming Virginia gubernatorial race. Virginia's Republicans participated in their own nominating convention on May 8th. They selected businessperson Glenn Youngkin as the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia. Youngkin, a former CEO at the private equity firm Carlyle Group, had personally lent his campaign $5.5 million through the end of March, according to the last available campaign finance report. Virginia Republican organizers conducted what they described as an unassembled convention, with about 30,000 pre-registered Republicans voting at nearly 40 sites across the Commonwealth. It is noteworthy that the state of Virginia does not register voters by party. However, in the 2017 election, 1,175,731 Virginians voted for Republican candidate Ed Gillespie. Based on this figure, it would appear that the 2021 candidate selection was available to less than 3% of voters who had previously chosen the Republican candidate. Nevertheless, Youngkin declared that Virginians have made it clear that they are ready for a political outsider with proven business experience to bring real change in Richmond. Here's an additional statistic. According to the Virginia Department of Elections, 4,486,821 Virginians voted in 2020. Based on this figure, it would appear that the Virginians that Mr. Youngkin claimed for his nomination actually constituted less than 1% of registered voters. The results of the Democratic primary will be announced at a future date. And now on to our last news story for today. Some news outlets are reporting the news that the 17-year cicadas are back. We're not going to spend much time on that item because it's obvious to anyone who takes a walk outside. Instead, we'll look at a recent crime report from the Arlington Police Department. The May 14th crime report shows the following. One case of weapons violation, 1 recovered stolen auto, 1 case of fraud, 1 case of destruction of property, 3 reports of suspicious circumstances, 2 reports of identity theft, 2 cases of assaults and battery, 2 reports of robbery, 4 reports of larceny, and 7 reports of larceny from auto. Some viewers and listeners may be curious from the distinction between larceny and robbery. Here is a brief description. Larceny is generally defined as the unauthorized taking of another person's property with the intent to permanently deprive them of the use of the property. By contrast, robbery is defined as the taking of property from another person by the use of force, intimidation, or the threat of force. It is also described as a form of felony theft. The key distinction is that while robbery involves the threat of use of force, larceny can be committed without any direct contact between the perpetrator and the victim. In the COVID age, larceny might be described as no-contact theft. Well, that does it for the news this week. Now on to our community bulletin board, CBB Stories.
Hi, and welcome to CBB. Our first event is for kids aged 5 to 12. Dress to get wet as you and your folks spend some time exploring waterfalls, trying to catch water striders and fish, and taking a closer look at some creek critters. You must wear closed-toe shoes in the water. Of course, you'll need to register children and adults, since children must be accompanied by a registered adult. For information, call 703-228-3403. You can register online or call 703-228-4747. The activity number is 632-821-F. That's on Saturday, May 29th from 10 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. at Lubber Run Park, 200 North Columbus Street. Now this next event is for adults. The grown-ups are invited to join up at Long Branch Nature Center for an early morning coffee and creature meet and greet as they sit by the fire and discuss all things nature. Of course, no campfire is complete without s'mores, but they ask that you bring your own supplies, please. For information, call 703-228-6535. You can register online or call 703-228-4747. The activity number is 632-941-K, and it's on Sunday, May 30th from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock a.m. at Long Branch Nature Center at Glen Carlin Park, 625 South Carlin Springs Road. Next up, we have some art. Gallery Underground in May presents in their Focus Gallery something called Patterns, an all-member show of works highlighting pattern and texture. Pattern exists in nature as well as in designed objects, and real or actual texture can dramatically enhance a work of art. The artists were tasked with creating works that repeat or echo elements to communicate a sense of balance, harmony, contrast, rhythm, or movement, or to imbue works with a visual and tactile sense of texture. In the main gallery, there are new works by the members in all themes in media including oil, acrylic, pastel, water media, sculpture, glass, ceramics, wood, and metalwork. The show runs through May 28th. The gallery is open Mondays through Fridays from 10 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. at 2100 Crystal Drive. Finally, in CBB, the National Landing Market is now open. It's an arts market, and their slogan is, "A little bit of everything." The goal of the organizers is to reflect the region's amazing diversity. Preference will be shown to artisans who live in or are within close proximity to National Landing, but organizers will also maximize retailers all the way from Southern Virginia to New York. It will be curated to accommodate varying incomes, allowing for an inclusive experience. They will be open on Saturdays through July 31st from 11 o'clock a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. at 220 20th Street South. Now it's time for 55 Plus News.
Howdy, and welcome to 55 Plus News. Our first event is all about the popular game Sudoku. Now, if you're like me, you're wondering, what the heck is Sudoku? Well, the online dictionary says it's a puzzle in which players insert numbers 1 to 9 into a grid consisting of 9 squares subdivided into a further 9 smaller squares in such a way that every number appears once in each horizontal line, vertical line, and square. Anyway, that's good enough for me. This fun and stimulating puzzle game aids in maintaining cognitive functioning through problem solving and planning. Beginners and pros are welcome. The activity number is 913601-3, and that's coming up on Thursday, May 27th from 2 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required, and this is a virtual event. Next up, we got the return of the cicadas. They say Brood X is back. The periodical cicadas are returning to our region after 16 years in the ground. Join park naturalist Ken Rosenthal to explore this rare and fascinating natural spectacle. You'll discover where they went, why they are back, and how this unique creature manages to survive. Actually, I used to think that Brood X was just a teenager in a bad mood, and that a periodical cicada was like a bug who likes to read newspapers. But you learn something every day. Anyway, you can register online or call 703-228-4747. The activity number is 913400-2, and that's coming up on Thursday, May 27th from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required. Once again, this is a virtual event. Next up, we got something called German Conversation.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Non, je parle seulement en français. Eh bien, en anglais, s'il vous plaît.
Well, if you do speak German, this is a chance to join up with a cordial group of people with knowledge of the language in a weekly dialogue. Stimulating and sociable gatherings provide lively discussions in German on topics that are easy to discuss and interesting to all. You can register online or call 703-228-4747. The activity number is 913650-13, and that's on Friday, May 28th from 10 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock noon. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required, and it's a virtual event. Finally, in 55 plus news, 55 Plus Live is a new talk show and a great way to stay up to date with 55 plus programs on the first and third Tuesday of each month. Actually, the show's been going for several months now, but don't let that stop you. Enjoy previews of entertainment demonstrations, seminars, and other great programs you'd usually find in person at a senior center. Don't miss this opportunity to catch up with friends. You can register online or call 703-228-4747. The activity number is 912801-8, and it's on Tuesday, June 1st from 12 noon to 1 o'clock p.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required, and it's another virtual event. Anyway, that's all I got for 55 plus news. Now I think we gotta set through some commentary.
Here is a late-breaking bit of feel-good news. Our friends at Arl Now and Arlington Patch have just posted a report that, as of the morning of May 18th, no new coronavirus cases had been reported in Arlington for the previous 24 hours. They went on to state that, quote, the last time there were 0 new cases in a given day was in July 2020 during last summer's lull, end quote. However, we would add a cautionary note. This appears to be an example of an incomplete news story because it does not provide information about how many Arlingtonians were tested that day. The fewer people tested, the greater the likelihood of a 0 new case day. The extreme example would be if no tests were administered, but we can do a little better than that, even though detailed information is hard to find. The Virginia Department of Health shows that for all health districts in Virginia, 5,625 people were tested on May 17th. A week earlier, on May 10th, the number of people tested was 13,479. Unfortunately, the Virginia Department of Health provided only statewide testing numbers. The happy 0 statistic may also be complicated by the widespread assumption that fully vaccinated individuals are completely immune to catching or carrying the coronavirus. This mistaken belief could lead to fully vaccinated, asymptomatic individuals deciding against testing even after exposure. Without testing, it would be impossible to determine whether or not one fully vaccinated asymptomatic individual had been exposed by another fully vaccinated asymptomatic individual. It must also be noted that in the world of statistics, the number 0 is the most powerful number of all. It cannot be multiplied, divided, or extrapolated upon. For example, while 1 out of 10 could be extrapolated to suggest 100 out of 1,000, 0 out of 10 would still come out 0 out of 1,000, or 10,000, or even the 200,000 plus residents of Arlington County. Finally, Arlingtonians would do well to remember that the 0 case number from July of 2020 was followed by a spike in case numbers only 2 weeks later. We sound this cautionary note because the virus itself does not care what yesterday's reported case count was, nor does it care whether or not a mask mandate gets lifted. It will simply spread and infect wherever it can. We are not attempting to spread fear, but we do wish to encourage continued caution. Here is the result of a little more research into the history of Virginia's gubernatorial primaries. In the last gubernatorial primaries in 2017, Ralph Northam won the Democratic nomination with 303,541 votes. Edward Gillespie won the Republican nomination with 160,100 votes. In 2021, according to NBC News, Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin was chosen with 55% of 28,000 votes cast, which works out to about 15,400 people. That's less than 10% of the 2017 number. Considering the recent claims of rigged elections among Republicans, this newest effort by their organizers to allow 15,400 voters to choose their nominee raises questions about the integrity of their own primary process. As for the Democrats, 5 Democrats seek the nomination to succeed Governor Ralph Northam, who is limited to 1 term. They are Delegate Lee J. Carter. Mr. Carter's website states that, and we quote, "Lee is not a typical politician. An electronics repairman by trade, an enlisted Marine Corps veteran, Lee has represented the people of Manassas and Prince William County since 2018 in Virginia's House of Delegates." Unquote. Next up is Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Mr. Fairfax's website does not lead with his biography, but he is the incumbent lieutenant governor. His site mentions support for education, justice, health care, and housing. Third in line is former delegate Jennifer D. Carroll Foy. Ms. Foy's website describes her as, quote, "one of the first women to graduate from Virginia Military Institute, a foster mom, and public defender. Now she's running to be the first woman elected governor of Virginia and serve as the first black woman to be governor nationwide." End quote. Then we have former Governor Terry McAuliffe. Mr. McAuliffe's website describes him as, quote, "the youngest child of a middle-class family who has spent his life championing progressive issues and fighting for working families." End quote. He is also a former Virginia governor, preceding Dr. Northam, so his experience has at least been established. Next up, Senator Jennifer McClellan. Ms. McClellan's website describes her as, quote, "a daughter of community leaders and educators raised in the segregated South during the Depression, who was raised with a strong sense of servant leadership and a calling to strengthen her community." End quote. It also describes her as, quote, "the first House member to be pregnant while in office." End quote. At Don Hammond's Arlington Weekly News, it is not our policy to endorse a political candidate. When asked, we have occasionally interviewed candidates in the past, but the closure of the TV studio makes this impractical. We would note that many of the self-descriptions from the candidates themselves seem to provide little indication as to their ability to serve as a state governor. Democratic voters seem to be offered a choice between an electronics repairman, a VMI graduate and foster mom, a youngest child, a daughter of community leaders, and a candidate who does not describe himself at all. However, these representations seem to matter little to voters. After all, a few years ago, Arlingtonians selected a school board member who boasted that her child had been featured as a singer on national television. Having a famous daughter seemed like a curious qualification at the time, but now it hardly seems any stranger than having had important parents. That concludes the commentary, and that concludes this week's show. We will be back next week with more news from Arlington. Meanwhile, be careful, be safe, and be well. Years go by and I grow wise, so now it comes as no surprise when someone says it's time to choose and makes their choice and says I lose. The world is great, the world is wide, and time's on someone else's side again. years go by and I grow calm. I patiently await the dawn. Another day, another choice, another vote without a voice. The simple truth can't be denied. Time's on someone else's side again. Disappointment's nothing new. I take the news without complaint. If patience is a virtue, they're making me a saint. The years go by and I grow old, and wishes fade and dreams grow cold, and no one comes around to say that I should wait